Meet the one Ukrainian special ops force that Russia fears most. When Russia first launched its large-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, my contacts in the U.S. intelligence community were telling me that Ukraine would fall. It could take weeks, perhaps as long as a month, but ultimately Russia would take Kyiv. Now, this was in no way an indictment of the Ukrainian military. This was more of an overestimation of the competency of the Russian military. A lot of us were guilty of this, all the way up to then POTUS President Biden. How we all got it so wrong is an interesting topic for another video, but I suspect it was a combination of Russian propaganda, relentless news cycles about Russian superweapons, and the fact that the intel weenies have learned to always overestimate. So at the time, my first thoughts immediately went to how Ukrainian forces could mount an insurgency or a guerrilla war against the occupying Russian forces and basically make life as miserable for them as possible. I immediately started researching this possibility and discovered that the U.S. government, through the U.S. Army's Green Berets, had already been training Ukrainian special forces for this very scenario. Fortunately, we were all wrong. Putin didn't take Kyiv. The skill, passion, and ingenuity of the Ukrainian defenders, together with the downright criminal incompetence of the Russian military, bad at combined arms, bad at logistics, bad at communication, bad at OPSEC, bad at nearly everything, saved Ukraine. Hey friends, Wes here, and now, over 3 years later, Putin is still throwing Russian soldiers into the meat grinder by the tens of thousands for a few square kilometers of land. But what about the Ukrainian units trained by U.S. Army Special Forces? Well, these units turn their attention to performing daring operations behind enemy lines. Timur's special unit is the nightmare of Russian logistics officers. You won't find their faces on recruitment posters or their names in Sunday parade rolls, but if you're a Russian logistics officer, Timur's special unit is the reason you sleep badly and count HIMARS instead of sheep. On a moonless night deep inside occupied territory, Ukraine's most elusive commandos did what they do best: slit through Russian rear areas, shredded supply chains, and left what passes for Russian command and control in ruins. If you believe Kyiv's numbers, this single operation gutted an entire battalion, over 330 Russian troops dead, 550 more wounded, and the offensive they were counting on derailed faster than a Russian armored train in Tokmak. The architects of this chaos was the Timur Special Unit, a shadowy ensemble within Ukraine's HUR, military intelligence, that's rewritten the script for irregular warfare. They don't just raid, they evaporate targets. Most of their operations never make headlines, but when they do, the effect is mythic. The unit's namesake, known only as Lieutenant Colonel Timur, has turned the Russians' soft underbelly into a demolition derby. He's the man who made Moscow's generals nervous enough to check under their beds for frogmen, drone pilots, and jet skis with Ukrainian flags. Ask any Ukrainian about Independence Day 2023, and they'll mention the time Timur's commandos crashed the party in Crimea. The team stormed ashore on jet skis after a 125-mile ride, dodged Russian patrols, and left a Ukrainian flag waving on the peninsula for the first time since 2014 to make sure Russia remembered who owned the place. As for the real prize, they blew up a Russian electronic warfare installation that had been jamming Ukrainian missiles, delivering a shot across the bow that rang all the way to the Kremlin Situation Room. But spectacle aside, the message was unmistakable. Russia's rear is not a sanctuary. Quote, "The Russians now know we can appear anywhere, anytime," end quote. Timur told this to journalists after the operation. For once, Kremlin censors had nothing witty to say. Timur's unit isn't your standard military outfit. It's a hydra. Dozens of highly specialized teams with talents ranging from amphibious raids to drone dogfights and underwater sabotage. Subunits like the Nobody and the Raven groups wage drone warfare both on land and on sea. The Bratstvo battalion pulls off cross-border amphibious raids that would give the Navy SEALs a run for their money. Spectre 33 is rumored to be Ukraine's go-to underwater wrecking crew. The org chart reads less like an army manual and more like the casting call for a Bond film. Military analysts credit the Timur unit with some of the most consequential operations of the war, from slugfest in Bakhmut's trenches to the headline-grabbing stunts like the liberation of Snake Island and hunting Wagner mercenaries across 2 continents. Their work in Sumy is a case study in versatility. By fighting in the trenches, the forest, and in the sky above, when Russia tried to barge into Sumy, Timur's team rolled out the welcome mat, with explosives underneath. Ukrainian intelligence says the result was nearly 1,000 Russian soldiers killed or wounded, halting the advance cold. The unit's campaign video for the operation didn't bother with subtlety. Quote, "The armed struggle continues. Glory to Ukraine." That's an understatement. Operational details are still classified, but open source sleuths and analysts agree. Russian attacks in northeast Ukraine ground to a halt around late May, right after Timur's multi-pronged assault. Chimera, Younger, Stugna, Siberian Battalion, Arata, Raven Group, and more, all under Timur's banner. Combined air power, artillery, drones, and sabotage in a single operation. The Oskol River, a critical natural barrier protecting Kupiansk, stayed out of Russian hands thanks to helicopter-led assaults and a tempo of destruction that would make von Clausewitz blush. And Timur's reach isn't limited to the Slavic theater. When Russian-backed rebels made trouble in the Sudan, 100 commandos, many from Timur's crew, parachuted in to teach drone warfare, lead night raids, and push Wagner's mercenaries back into the African shadows. The message was as direct as it gets. Ukraine's war with Russia is global, and Russia's proxies are running out of safe places to hide. Quote, "We have no boundaries," end quote, Timur told Ukrainian Pravda in early 2024. Occupied territories or anywhere in the world, if you're a soldier or an agent working for Russia, we will find you, end quote. So units like Timur's don't magically appear. Someone trained them. That someone was the U.S. Army Special Operations Command, and specifically irregular warfare specialists known popularly as the Green Berets. Unlike the U.S. Navy SEALs and the U.S. Army Rangers, who often focus on direct action and reconnaissance, Green Berets focus very specifically on unconventional warfare, foreign internal defense, and training foreign military forces. This is why speaking a foreign language is often a prerequisite for these particular operators. In May of 2022, Brigadier General Joseph Hilbert, commander of the 7th Army Training Command in Germany, walked reporters through the evolution of and then current status of U.S. training for Ukrainian forces. The mission, which began in 2015 after Russia's invasion of Crimea and the Donbas, started with hands-on basic training for Ukrainian National Guard and evolved into a sophisticated NATO-style advisory program designed to develop Ukraine's own combat training centers. By the start of the invasion, over 23,000 Ukrainian troops had cycled through these programs, with a heavy emphasis on combined arms, doctrine development, and the creation of a non-commissioned officer corps, which, by the way, Russia still lacks. How do they do anything without NCOs? After U.S. trainers withdrew from Ukraine in February of 2022 due to security concerns, training operations shifted to locations like Germany, where U.S. personnel instructed Ukrainian troops on Western artillery, armored vehicles, radars, and more irregular warfare tactics. But some of the Green Berets stayed in Ukraine even after the Russian invasion. ABC News reported in April of 2023 that a small Green Beret team had been based at the U.S. Embassy in Kyiv since February of 2022, assisting Ukrainian military planners with operations. AFCEA International reports that the U.S. Special Operations Forces, specifically the 10th Special Forces Group, pivoted to support Ukraine, adapting their methods to advise, assist, and accompany Ukrainian forces in the field. So, does this mean that U.S. Special Forces are actively exchanging gunfire with Russian forces? I have my doubts, since that would be incredibly risky. No Green Beret wants to be the dude who started World War III. But I wouldn't rule out one-off engagements, especially in the chaos of war. Still, Timur's unit is one of the most successful special operations units to operate in Europe since World War II. Their decentralized nature, access to U.S. training and intelligence, and a propensity for high-risk, high-reward operations has given them a legendary status among the Special Forces community. Anecdotally, Russian troops, especially in rear areas, are reporting fear of Timur, as if they don't have enough to fear already. Ukrainian drones, the sky-cracking sound of a French AASM hammer bomb, and now a highly competent small unit special ops force that will happily kill them in their sleep. In this sense, Timur's unit is as much a psychological weapon as it is anything else. So let's raise a glass tonight for the quiet professionals. These men, and I'm assuming they're mostly men, won't publicly celebrate themselves, so it's up to us. That's it for today, y'all. Have a great weekend. I'll see you back here on Sunday with a new video, and as always, glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. Crimea is Ukraine.